Have you had the time to stop to consider that whatever side you're on in the political or cultural wars, that you may be being manipulated by an overriding, dominating central force? Are we being divided and turned against each other unnecessarily? And are we able to let go of some of our prejudices and bigotry, no matter where we may stand on the political or ideological spectrum? I had an amazing conversation with Sarah Chayes, who lived in Afghanistan, consulted with the Pentagon, who had access to some of the elite agencies and individuals that run the world. In this conversation on my podcast, Under the Skin, available from Luminary, you can get it anywhere, I talked to her about division. I talked to her about the energies that may underline dispute and fragmentation. This is a fantastic conversation. If you want to learn about why the world is the way it is, and I know you do, stay to the end of this conversation. Let me know what you think.
I feel like that the only way that we can be optimistic, particularly when you identified what it took to bring about, like, you know, the Roosevelt's New Deal or whatever, like, you know, this many world wars, this depression, this pandemic, that it's important to bear in mind that all material reality is underwritten by the experience that we have as individuals and collectively, and that if we change our consciousness and our perception, which is why the media works so hard and why these agencies work so hard and why propaganda machinery works so hard, and the police and the state, I believe to some degree is in order to prevent a sudden radical shift in perception that would immediately and overnight change the world. If there's a general strike, if people won't participate, if people become non-compliant, there's nothing you can do about it. And it's just like, you know, there's a lot of machines to prevent that.
100%. And I think the other thing that a technique that I've noticed, again, around the world deployed by these corrupt self-dealing networks, is to divide up the people along identity lines. And Lebanon, looking at the Lebanon anti-corruption uprising starting in 2015, was a really clear example. But, you know, people will say, well, that's Lebanon. But then I look at the United States, and it's easy to say the Republicans are playing the identity card more in very ugly ways. But I have to say, I feel like the elites on both sides are actually spending more time focusing on identity issues, which inherently are going to split us up, rather than, and we, ordinary people, are not resisting that manipulation. And from what you say, what I think is that shift in mindset is going to have something to do with connections. And that's connection among people. But it's also, you know, I mean, at the moment, we're talking a lot about white supremacy. I'm starting to feel that white supremacy is just a subset of a bigger problem, which is Homo sapiens supremacy. We're just one species on this planet. And if we can begin to reweave the webs of connection that bind us together with the other myriad living creatures on this planet, which don't have any less right to live on it than we do, that I think is part of the mindset shift that you're talking about. And I think a second part has to do with quality versus quantity. I think quantity has become the default value. So you talked about GDP earlier, and it's really growing GDP, right? Size of GDP, size of population. I mean, I listen to lots of, you know, listen and read lots of media, sort of what you'd call mainstream media. They all treat a falling population as some kind of catastrophe. Well, exactly how many more Homo sapiens do there have to be on this planet? You know what I mean? Like, why is growth? My understanding is that infinite growth on a finite body is called cancer, and it's fatal. So how do we wrench ourselves away from the easier counting of value by quantity? A larger cup of coffee is better than a smaller cup of coffee. Well, what about the quality of the stuff in the cup? And what about the quality of our interactions? So those, I think, are the two big mindset changes that you're right, we're going to have to work hard to make them.
Sarah, even life itself, like if you think about some of the data that has emerged around mortality during this pandemic, there's a sort of idea that our function is to just sustain life, sustain it, but we all know, what about the qualitative component of our individual and collective lives? What about dealing with the poverty and inequality and suffering we see all around us? On a personal level, I sometimes reflect and I pray for the epiphany that will take me there. Then would I be happier if I just said, you know what, I'm going to open my home up to refugees and homeless people and just live with other people communally now? I'm not going to crave and treasure privacy, comfort, and luxury. I'm going to liberate myself from my man-made manacles, to quote Blake. And the idea is frightening to me, the idea of letting go of my own comfort, my own grip on materialism, my own entrenchant individualism, no doubt learned from the system that I grew up in, learned from, became a celebrity in, a devotee of this system. My apostasy is this: it didn't work for me. It doesn't work for me. It's a fundamentalist ideology that is, those horizons are so far apart. We don't even know we're in it. We don't question it anymore. And what you said about identity, I think, is significant. And I think you're right. I think it's not a problem that you can target one individual set of political beliefs with. It feels, because it makes sense to you, really, that if you are like a sort of a right down in there QAnon Trump supporting person, but your son or daughter is trans, you're going to have the experience of understand, and I would hope vice versa. That if you are a non-binary person, but your beloved grandfather votes Trump. And I've noticed a lot of almost very, in my country as well as yours, almost people directly trying to go, this is how to have your Brexit argument at Christmas. This is how to, if your relatives are talking about Brexit. And I was like, what I felt like is, well, we ain't got time for this crap. We're human beings with one another. I sometimes think, and this is what I was actually, to tell you the truth, Sarah, I was really interested in talking to Sebastian about, is it just that we're tribal bloody apes? We can't conceptualize a global life with so many not even fractured, distinct, discrete, different forms of identity, different ways of worshipping, different ways of being, and neither should it be a problem. If you want to organize a community in this way, do it. If you want to organize a community this way, do it. Just let people leave the community if they want to, and don't hurt people. It doesn't really matter. Okay, have guns. Okay, be identify in whatever way you want. What difference does it make? It only becomes a problem when you try to centralize power, which doesn't benefit the individuals within those communities, but benefits the people at the top of the hierarchies that are able to corral together, whether it was agriculture, the Industrial Revolution, or the more recent and all-consuming tech revolutions that just turn these things into markets and turn us against one another.
Well, do you agree with Sarah and me that there could be a new populism? Do you see the possibility of us being united no matter how far apart we may be? Do you see that it's necessary for people to come together and confront the centralized forces that currently dominate us? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I need to hear your opinions so that I can learn and change myself. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at this one. If you want to learn more about meditation and spirituality, look at this cheeky guy. Please sign up to my mailing list and consider subscribing to Luminary, where I have a conversation like this every week, as well as leading a guided meditation to help you. Please stay with me on this journey. Stay free.